we are live. I give Zach a lot of credit doing the live version of this. Though we have had we did have War on Drugs. They were live when we did it, right? Amos was here for live. I actually have, Zach, so Coolio, it just came out, Coolio passed away.
I saw.
And I have a Coolio story that I will wait for Mike to return.
Okay.
Because who's going to have a Coolio story? I legitimately have a Coolio story.
Not me. Yeah, that's 59 years old, I saw.
Yeah. Yeah, man. There's some people that you're just like, man, that is the fucking 90s right there. And Coolio is just right there in the 90s. Mike, I don't know if you heard, Coolio passed away. Yeah, so I have a Coolio story, quick Coolio story. So in Philly, I was responsible for Wing Bowl for several years. And one of the things that after I took over WIP, we did was we had like musical guests or whatever. So we booked Coolio to play a few songs at Wing Bowl, 7 a.m. at the Wells Fargo Center. And I had one rule for his agent and one rule for his manager. It's like, we're bringing Coolio in there. You're going to be live on the radio. No cursing, no new songs. Just fucking play Gangster's Paradise, whatever. Okay. So, we're an hour and a half into Wing Bowl, and Angelo, morning show host, said Coolio's ready on the other side of the arena. And Angelo goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Coolio." And the first words out of his mouth were, "I'm going to play y'all some new shit." And I was like, this motherfucker broke both of my requests in 3 seconds. I ran as fast as I could to the other side of the arena, and I went over to the guy who helped me book him. It was a friend of mine, Gordon. I looked at him, and I was just like, what the fuck is he doing? And the guy just put his hands up. He was like, I don't know. And Coolio did 2 minutes of his new song and then went into Gangster's Paradise. But he showed me, and rest in peace, Coolio.
I mean, if I was Coolio, I wouldn't listen to you either.
No, right. Of course.
Pretty clear.
Of course. Well, what am I going to do?
What are you going to do to Coolio? What could you have ever done to Coolio?
Yeah.
Can't imagine.
I mean, he must have gotten, give me a line of Gangster's Paradise like 45 times a day from just random people, his own family. I mean, what was the movie that was with? There was like a Michelle Pfeiffer teacher movie.
It was
Dangerous Minds. Am I making that up? Is that
That's what it was. Yeah, Dangerous Minds.
I mean, that video back when there were videos. It was just everywhere all the time.
It was the shit. All right, we ready? Ready to go? Here we go. The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS, and brought to you by Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Beds. Get yours at bigbarker.com/Ricky. Body Bio. Get 20% off any Body Bio product with code RTRS20 at bodybio.com. MortgageCS. Become a MortgageCS Ricky VIP at mortgagecs.com/Ricky. And Stateside Urban Craft Vodka, the official sponsor of the Corner 3 newsletter with Zoe. StatesideVodka.com. On the show today, with Media Day behind us, training camp is going, and Zach Lowe joins us to maybe or maybe not drink one beer and help us preview the Sixers season and also defend himself from our attacks about his MVP vote, maybe at some point during the pod. Before we get going, I do not have one beer. I do have one Surfside iced tea and vodka made by our friends. Beer. You have one beer. Oh, there you go. Surfside is iced tea and vodka, only 100 calories, just the right amount of sweetness. And because iced tea does not have carbonation, it does not have carbonation. It's just fucking awesome. We talked about it being the perfect drink for the summer. It's a perfect drink for the fall as well. You can get it at statesidevodka.com. You got to be 21 to enjoy it. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. say the name. 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 I say the name. I say the name. Say the name.
Life's tricky Sanchez forever.
Welcome to the Rights Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who is a fan of a team who has had no off-season controversies. That is one Mike Levin, along with our very special guest, one Zach Lowe. Zach, how are you?
I'm great. I'm ready. I'm ready to get going. Ready for the season. Felt like a long off season compared to the last two. And you're right. Philly, stability, off-season stability.
Name of the game.
Minus a minor.
The best ability is stability.
Minus a minor.
That's what we've always said.
Minus a little cap circumvention investigation that may or may not be ongoing. Who cares? Really,
yeah,
right?
Come on. What are they going to? They're not going to catch anybody. What are you crazy? Michael Rubin.
Do you think anybody at the NBA really
silence.
gives a fuck about that?
Probably.
Or are they like
at
going
least-
through the motions, like someone reaching for their wallet to be like, I guess I'll split it. We'll split it. Like, and someone's like, I'll just pay for it. They're just like, we have to do this. We have to go through this charade.
Probably they care about the appearances a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it'll be at worst a second round pick if that. Who knows what they'll find? Who knows?
Well, I would say, we don't have to do long on this, but the two possible things, I think one is possibly a lot more serious than the other. If they find out that they talked or there was communication before they were allowed to communicate, that's one thing. But if they were to somehow discover that the Sixers are getting him money that is beyond, that's a different thing.
That will not be discovered. And that's beyond the pale. I actually think the serious thing is if they find any evidence that they talked during when he was on the Nets. Everyone focused on they coincidentally had the right amount of money for PJ Tucker and Daniel House and all that. I mean, there was just so much noise during the Nets thing. But look, it's the NBA. What's done is done. Nets got a good deal out of it. Your guy Ben Simmons, he's healthy, he's ready to go, and they got a couple first round picks and off and running.
I don't have like a prepared list of questions, Zach. We've done this too many times. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna go follow the conversation.
Mike says that like generally he would have a prepared list of
I
anything.
I always have a prepared list of questions when we have guests on. But for Zach, we're just gonna shoot the shit.
Okay.
You mentioned Ben on your last podcast and on several podcasts. You've talked about Ben being like the Draymond Green role and stuff. And how many years in a row do we have to say that might be it before it's just like he's actually not going to do that? He doesn't really want to do that kind of thing.
Well, why? I don't understand. Why can't he do that? What does he?
Because he doesn't want. He doesn't do it because he doesn't.
Well, does he want to stand in the dunker spot instead? Because that's what he does in the playoffs every year. If he's not going to be the Draymond Green role, what does that make him? The Paul Reed? I don't know what role that is, but like the Draymond Green role is better than that.
I agree. I don't think it's a bad advice. It's just for years it's been like, well, he could just do that and let small ball five surround him with shooters. Let him like dribble handoffs and short rolls and stuff. But like the amount of short rolls that Ben Simmons has been a part of in his career is relatively minuscule. And it's just assuming that he's going to be willing to do that.
Right back into Ben.
This point in his career, just because he brought it up.
It seems like it's
an easy assumption. It seems like an easy assumption. Obviously, like Ben is an incredibly athletic and skilled player in a number of ways. But like to slip into becoming one of the most unique players of all time in Draymond Green seems kind of difficult.
No, Draymond Green is overused as an archetype, but it is such an interesting window into how amazing all of these guys are for their entire lives and how you have to be wired to make it in the NBA. Like I remember talking about this with people about Aaron Gordon. Remember like when Frank Vogel was like, we're going to use Aaron Gordon like Paul George, like Aaron Gordon, and he wanted to be a superstar. And like, he's another guy who should just be his version of whatever Draymond Green is. And these guys are so resistant to it. Not resistant to it, but it's a hard sell sometimes. I'm like, Draymond Green is I don't know how many all-star games he's made. He's going to make the Hall of Fame. If you do that on a winning team, you're going to get all the money, all the fame, all the accolades. You're still going to – it's not like you're averaging 6 points a game. You're going to average – if you can score like Ben can score around the rim, you're going to average like 16, 10, and 9. Like that's not a bad not a bad life, you know?
Well, I think the thing that gets forgotten, skill set aside, because I think skill-wise, he is perfectly capable of doing that. The thing that Draymond Green brings, and one of the reasons he's able to make such a difference in that role, is he is remarkably tough and remarkably resilient in that way. And Ben has not really shown any of that. Honestly, for me, it's just so funny to see the videos today of him shooting jumpers and fading away on every single one of them. And then Steve Nash, I looked at the quote on your very own ESPN.com, and he was like, he doesn't have to take one jump shot. That's not what we'll run him for. I just want to run into the wall over and over and over again to see that it's happening elsewhere, you know?
And the jump shot and the foul shooting have gotten the most obvious stuff, obvious coverage of it. But tell me what you think, because I don't feel like this is discussed as much. He stopped going to the basket. He and has always faded away on layups and not gone directly at the fucking rim the way that Giannis does and you want him to do. He's always shied away from contact, faded away, done that little right-handed half teardrop kind of thing. It's never been using his power to overpower people and using his speed to get right at the rim, aside from in semi-transition. And that's not talked about enough as an offensive player.
The jump shot, the three-pointer stuff, I called it a red herring last week on my podcast. It's probably not the right term for it, because he's almost using it as a red herring now too. Where it's everyone wants to talk about the jump shooting. I'm like, I actually don't really want to talk about the jump shooting. I want to talk about the free throw shooting, and what you're describing is the trickle-down effect of not wanting to go to the line when you're shooting 34% in the playoffs, and what that does to your team's offense. The jump shooting, it's almost like they're using it as a shield to hide from the real thing, which is the free throw shooting and all the effects you're talking about. I don't care about this. I'm with Steve Nash. I've given up on the jump shooting. I just think it's so far from reality at this point. Just go to the line and get fouled. Do what Giannis does.
Yeah, though. Well, I can't believe we're doing all this with him.
We're getting it out of the way. We're getting it out of the way.
Being a zero threat to shoot does truly affect his ability as a on-ball guard, you know, like he can't run pick and roll because nobody cares whether he's going to shoot or not. So I just
and he's also not a good ball handler in tight spaces. He's not making moves. He's just being bigger than people enough to go by them and be faster than them.
This is so just emblematic of what the last decade of your lives have been.
Yeah.
Just so much angst and drama and strangeness that here we are on the eve of, we can talk about whether this is the best team on paper of the Joel Embiid era or whatever. I think it has a strong case to be. And here we are relitigating the case of a guy who hasn't played since May 2021.
Well, I think this is the year that Andrew Bynum's knee cartilage holds up. I think this is it. I think we're going to get there, and it's going to just one more thing.
Zach Sharp, we had Andrew Sharp on last week.
Said the same thing.
Yeah, he was like, you guys are like a parody of your podcast.
That's right.
I said, we truly are.
But sometimes you just, this is what has eaten away at your soul gradually. You can't hide this. This is who you are as basketball fans. And it's why people like listening to you, because there are hundreds of thousands of people just like you who have had their souls eaten away by this insanity that's engulfed your organization.
Yeah, let's listen to these two people have a mental breakdown for their 10th straight year over fucking who's going to shoot, who's going to forget how to shoot, who's going to forget how to dribble. Is the backup center going to be able to stand on the court without imploding? Any of that stuff.
Is trust the process? Is trust the process scrawled on where did they find it? Scrawled on a beam somewhere in the practice facility?
The electrician. We know him.
I know.
We did not tell him to do it, and we just got photos one day. A union electrician. He had written it all over the facility. It's in the
pictures. In those pictures, if you remember, John Gonzalez wrote the article for The Ringer. In the picture, he took a photo of himself doing it, and he's wearing a black glove, like he's a criminal, like he's about to kidnap someone, and he's documenting it for his own sick fuckery. But
my in-laws used to live in Haverford, near this coffee shop called the Green Engine, which is this Villanova college coffee. All the colleges are around there. Coffee shop. It's as vanilla and unedgy as a coffee shop can possibly get. All bright lights and happy spaces. And at the front was a sign at the cash register that with like the little letters you stick onto little bulletin board kind of signs that said "Trust the process," and it just stayed there for years. And then one year the R in trust kind of hung crookedly, and they just kept it. And I was like, is anyone even monitoring this? Did some employee who's long lost put this here and they're just keeping it up? Do they even know what the process is? It was perfect.
Yeah. So when we announced you were going to come on, we did get several responses about one specific topic. And I feel like we need to get it out of the way up top. We will ask you about it right after. I warned Zach. I was like, if you're doing live, you got to be there for the commercials. So yeah. I was just there. So,
as a podcast host, I could use some tips, I think, in reading. Reads is underrated as a skill. I want to see how you guys do.
You do a good job, actually. Here's one tip I would give you that no one does right. When you're reading, never read to a group. Never say, hey, sports fans or basketball fans. People listen alone. You're just talking to one person.
Some of the ad copy has that in it.
Just ignore it.
And some of the ad copy is not great, man. Yeah. It's just not like, does this make any sense? There are some ads where I've actually had to add to my producer, like, is this right? Did we cut and paste the wrong thing?
We are lucky in that we have a good relationship with all of our sponsors, and they let me do basically whatever I want with the copy. So Big Barker Therapeutic.
This kind of podcast talk would have been so great on Sharp's tech podcast. It would have been so, like, really get inside of it with Sharp. I can't wait to listen.
Big Barker dog beds. Big Barker's been with us for several years. I was telling somebody about Big Barker today. There's a difference between the Big Barker and any other dog bed you get, specifically the ones that you see in pet stores, is that the difference is that Big Barker is a real bed. It is specifically created and built in a way to keep your dog healthier. Think about this. Think about the dog beds that you buy in the pet store. They look comfortable, right? They look plush, they look big. But really, when you look at them, when you see your dog lay on it, sinks right to the ground. It's basically like a pillow. You can't sleep on a pillow. It's not good for your joints. Whereas the Big Barker is engineered by experts to be supportive for your dog. In fact, there was a study by Penn Vet that showed that the dogs that slept on Big Barkers had an improvement in joint function, a reduction in pain severity. All these things are true. When they first came up with the Big Barker, when Eric first came out with the Big Barker, he did it for his dog, Hank. A giant dog, couldn't find a right bed for him. But now the Big Barker is so good for your dog, they have them for every size dog, from the Barker Jr., tiny one, up to the giant one. Go to bigbarker.com/Ricky. bigbarker.com/Ricky. First of all, you're going to see the difference with the Big Barker. You're also, if you go there, going to get the free Process Pup patches that you can put on the Big Barker dog bed. Then you send us a picture of your Big Barker with your dog on it, and we'll put them in the Process Pup gallery. Your only job as a dog owner, shout out to Legs, by the way. Legs got a new dog. His other dog crossed the Rainbow Bridge. Legs got a new dog, got a Big Barker for the dog. You send us a picture of your dog on the bed. We put them in the Process Pup gallery. 10-year warranty. The foam doesn't flatten, or they replace it for free. 1-year at-home trial. If you don't like it, if your dog doesn't like it, they'll give you full refund and even pay for the shipping. Handmade in the USA. Big Barker dog beds.
Zach, would you like to bark at the end of the Big Barker ad?
That's what we do.
I'll bark with you guys. That's fine.
Okay, let's bark. 3, 2, 1.
I go rough. As my standard bark. I don't know why. I've never.
No, it's nice.
Rough.
No, there's a lot of options.
So we mentioned you were coming on, and immediately, you are very well liked in our community. I will say, very high Q.
I'm a good sport.
Yeah, very well.
It's not that serious.
Yes, not that serious. But one thing that was serious was a certain award that the last year's Most Valuable Player award. And your support of Jokic landed you on the back of one of our T-shirts that said, you, along with several other writers who voted for Jokic, says wrong. You oftentimes, called him the best two-way center in the NBA, talked about the advanced stats of his defense as if you've never watched basketball, yada, yada, yada. Do you have any regret at all voting for Jokic over Embiid, last year's Most Valuable Player award?
No. I've lost no sleep over it, and in part because I agonized over it. I wasn't emphatic about it. I wasn't like what drove me crazy about the dialogue was, you're a moron if you think this, or you're wrong if you think this. I thought it was like a super, super close race. three-man race actually, and we haven't really talked about the Giannis sort of portion of votes. We can do that if you want, but I don't, and I would push back and say I don't know that I ever called him the best two-way center in the NBA. Maybe I did. I don't know. But what did you say I said about his defense?
Well, so here's the issue.
I think I said his defense is the numbers say it's much better than the eye test, but I think I actually said I thought the numbers were over exaggerating how good he is on defense and were slightly like I think I topped out at he's average, maybe a little better than average, and he's so good offensively. I know Embiid led the league in scoring. I don't think I'm not going to say it's not close, but I think he's like very clearly a significantly better offensive player. Maybe not significantly, but he's very clearly a better offensive player than Embiid. Like clearly.
Sure. Would you say though that the difference between Embiid and Jokic on defense is greater than the difference between Jokic and Embiid on offense?
I don't know.
Keep in mind that yes is the correct answer here. Just something to factor in.
I think when you factor in like the shooting efficiency,
yeah,
I think the difference on offense is not trivial. The difference on defense is big in Embiid's favor. I will say that the Warriors that first of all the Warriors came out of that series with like more respect for Jokic than they did going into it. I do think that's a nightmare matchup for any center. In fact, I don't know how Embiid would look against the Warriors because they're not like Jokic has looked fine in the playoffs against Damian Lillard, against the Clippers, against teams that just don't. I mean, Curry's 1 in a million, and just the way they play is 1 in a million. Like you can't hide anywhere. You can't do like. Remember, Brett Brown had to move Embiid off of Al Horford against the Celtics in 2018 because they were just picking on him. Like you can't do that against the Warriors. So I don't, as sort of clumsy as he looked at times in that series, I don't know that Embiid, despite the fact that he's a better defender than Jokic by a lot, would have fared all that well in that match. He would have fared better. I'm not sure it would have mattered.
Yeah.
Could you say, and this was always Mike's argument,
here we go.
did Jokic need to win another one?
That's right.
In the I know this sounds like a weak argument, but it seems like
it's nice to be fair. Zach, you have a daughter. It's nice to be fair. It's nice sometimes to share, to be nice. Jokic likes sharing the ball. Maybe he should have shared an MVP trophy because it was even. It was pretty much a tie.
I do have a daughter.
Yeah.
I don't really buy into that. It's the same thing as like, why was Giannis just never going to win last year? Like,
his team wasn't good enough.
His team was, you guys should have issue, frankly, with the Giannis voting block because I thought, as someone who thought really hard about that vote, and I know well enough now to know that for better or worse, my vote is, unless it's one of those years where it's just obvious who's going to win, which feels like every other year that's just, there's no drama. Someone just wins. They get like 80% of the first place votes. It's easy. My vote is going to be lambasted in some corners of the world. I remember when I voted for Kawhi in the year Russ won, Deadspin wrote a whole column about how stupid I was. That's impolite. They wrote a whole column saying the vote was stupid, was too cute, whatever it was. It's a vote that I stand by a million times. So I knew it was going to cause consternation. And I was thinking about the vote, and there was part of me that was like, I almost want to vote for Giannis just because no one is going to assail that vote because you've sort of abdicated picking between the two centers and just said, well, you can't argue with Giannis. They just won the championship. But it felt like a cop out to me, and I couldn't do it.
To me, it's just like you can pour over the numbers. You can really like get into it. You can look at all the tape, and it's just like, honestly, it's a fucking tie. It's a tie, and the MVP is not extremely just uniformly about one season of statistical and on-court basketball. It's about a narrative, and Embiid's narrative was great. Mike. He missed the first 2 fucking years of his career. His brother fucking died. He had to get shit on by his GM on Twitter. He like carried this team that was fucking like a ton of bullshit over and over again, as he is like the stability rock of this thing. His second best player was a guy who wouldn't shoot and then had a trade request. Like he fought through all that shit, and he tied two other very good elite all-time players, and he should have gotten it, and they would all have won, and it would be very nice, and they could all like cheers it and have a lovely time, and everyone would have been happy. But people were like finding like there's 1 decimal point, like 6 decimals in that we could get it, and that's Jokic. And it's just like, guys, it should have been nice.
That was a lot. I do think it's cool and endearing in a way that Embiid cares and is like openly sad about not winning it, whereas Jokic just could give a flying fuck about it. I think it's cool that Embiid cares. I did not like. What did you guys think of the whatever game? When was it? It was in the Miami series that they announced the award, and he had like a bad first half. Remember there was that halftime discussion of, he's sad he didn't win the MVP, so he's taking it out on the game and blah. I didn't enjoy that very much.
Yeah, I did. I also didn't think it was true. I didn't think that would make him play bad. Now he has had questionable playoff performances, and we will get to that. But I just didn't, and I've questioned him a lot in the last couple of years in that respect. But I did not buy that was why he didn't play well. I just didn't buy it.
Can I ask, what do you think, as a guy that we have had the same conversation around, Spike and I, like 47 different times over the last, couple months, years, whatever. What do you think, like, Tobias Harris's next year or two with the Sixers looks like?
Kind of like it did once they got Harden, I think, right? Like, just shoot more threes, run the floor. I think he has gotten better as a defender so that you can put him on whoever Tucker is not guarding, regardless of what position that is, and he can hang in. I do think when you start talking about the Sixers as, I think the structural criticism of this Philly team, the structural anxiety will be, are they trying to go to war with 2 and maybe 3 defensive liabilities in their starting 5, which might also be their closing 5. And whether you include Tobias would be the third one. I think he's less clearly a defensive liability than the 2 guards. I do think that raises sort of some interesting questions about him because they bring some really good perimeter defenders off the bench. And you start to think about, well, who should that person, replace? And then you naturally think, well, is it Maxey? Because he's one of the small guard defensive liabilities, and Melton's a guard, and House is a guard. Then you start to think is like Tobias's offense almost more superfluous than what Maxey brings. Obviously, it's not going to be Harden. Harden's Harden. Maxey feels like a more essential ingredient in how Philly's going to have to play than Tobias does, a less replaceable one. I think it's actually going to be interesting to see how Doc makes those kind of decisions. And maybe Doc just rides with like, our starters close the game. That's it. But I think he adapted pretty well to Harden's presence and how he would have to play. I also think that they will continue probably to investigate trades using his salary one way or another. I don't know if they'll find anything in season, but I don't know. I thought he adapted pretty well to being a more of a spot up guy, and would expect that to continue.
Once the playoffs started, he had a stretch where I think we would all agree that he had, and he acknowledged as such at media day that or I think Doc maybe acknowledged it, that he, like, something clicked in his brain and he was like, this is what I have to do. He's not comfortable shooting quickly, but he did it. If he's doing that sort of like like the Jay Crowder impersonation or whatever that he was doing, I wonder if that can last an entire season and into the playoffs if it's just not his natural state. I give him credit for trying it for a while. I just have watched him so long, and the other things that sort of player is supposed to bring to you, like exactly what PJ Tucker is, by the way, it's to a certain extent. Like, Tobias does not bring. He's not tough or decisive, or I don't think he's bad in any way. I just it just doesn't. You talked about the starting lineup being the same as the closing lineup. I don't know if you can put a $38 million player on the bench regularly in closing lineups, but just in my head, I feel PJ Tucker as the closing 4, and I don't feel Tobias Harris as the closing 3.
Well, I think definitely Doc won't, I think is the answer. I think there's an intense stubbornness to every single decision Doc makes. And also a little bit of just like sometimes good simplicity to it, being like, we're gonna throw them out there. I'm not gonna think about it too hard. These are the guys that we've been doing. I'm gonna keep going with that. And if things don't work out, then I'm gonna keep trying it because eventually it will.
There's a certain, I almost take a perverse liking to like a certain kind of very coachy stubbornness. Like I went to Knicks practice today because I had to try to talk to Toppin for something I'm doing, and Tibbs came out first. And because Toppin was going to be made available to the media after him, he knew, I think, there was going to be a lot of Toppin questions.
Did you see the Toppin Randall quote?
He was salivating for someone asking about Toppin Randall. Like you could tell, it's like, I know exactly what you guys want to hear. I know why you're asking. I know the answer that you
playing
want
him at the same time.
Yeah. I know. You did. Like I know all you nerds have looked up the lineup data. You want Toppin to play. He didn't say any of this, but just he had this glint in his eye. Like I'm going to give you an answer that is going to displease you, displease all your smart fans.
Yeah,
and I don't.
I'm
going to
get off.
I'm actually happy to do it. There was a little glint, and I was like, this is, as someone who just does not care, it was great theater for me. Tobias, to your point, and the Toronto series was awesome. Like the very best version of himself, and tailed off, if I remember right, kind of over the last 3 or 4 games of the Miami debacle.
Yeah, he did. He did, but they all did. It's fair to say that he did, but what Harden did is just like inexcusable and unforgettable and all of those things. We'll get to that in a second. Here's another one for you to take notes on, Zach, commercial read. Body Bio is a sponsor of ours that has big news. We love Body Bio. They're a supplement company, family owned, family operated, South Jersey. They have a new one, a new supplement that like is the gut supplement that you want. It's the one. It's Gut Plus. It came out on September 20th. I'm sure Mike from Body Bio talked to our Mike about Gut Plus.
He did.
So you've heard of probiotics. And probiotics are fine, but they're not. If you're taking a probiotic, it's probably not doing what you want it to do. There are over 500 different strains of probiotics, and unless you're taking the exact right one, it's not doing anything for you. So if you have bloat, if that sort of thing, it's not making you feel any better. So in comes Gut Plus, not a probiotic. It is a prebiotic and a postbiotic. So what it does is the prebiotic goes in there, knocks out all the bacteria, the bad bacteria, and it allows the good bacteria, the natural probiotic bacteria that your body wants to make, it lets it flourish. And the postbiotic in Gut Plus comes in, gets rid of all those symptoms that you're trying to get rid of. We're talking about 1 pill a day, maybe 2 if you're in really bad shape, but probably 1 pill a day. Gut Plus, prebiotic and postbiotic, lets your body create its own probiotic instead of taking that probiotic stuff. This is if you're going to take one gut supplement, and the gut and the brain, those are the keys to the health to health right there. Everything comes back to the gut and the brain. Try Gut Plus. I'm just telling, give it a try. Give it a try for a week and tell me if you feel any different. Go to bodybio.com, use code RTRS20. You get 20% off of Gut Plus, but 20% off of anything else. Elite, liposomal vitamin C, all of the stuff we've talked about. Go to bodybio.com. The only gut supplement you need, Gut Plus, use code RTRS20. All right, Zach. I've heard this phrase on podcasting a bunch recently. Steel man. Have you heard of steel manning recently?
No.
Okay, so a straw man is where you create sort of like a bad argument for your opposition to defeat, right? Like I say that somebody said something. Steel man is where you try to make a good argument for the other side. So what I would like you to do, because you've been positive about the Sixers, you've been positive about the Sixers for a number of years.
Yeah, to your own detriment.
I feel good this time. I feel good.
There you go.
Wow. All right.
So I want you to steel man. I want you to convince me why I should trust James Harden and Joel Embiid in the playoffs. I want you to make the positive argument. That's your job here.
I thought you were going to give me an easy one, and then it just at the end, the anvil came down on my head. Embiid's easy. Like I know Embiid. Like when has he struggled in the playoffs? The fluke injuries, right? Whether it was the face, some things are always breaking. There's nothing you can do about that except don't fall over. What are you supposed to tell him not to do? And then the Toronto series where he was sick, and Marc Gasol is like the Embiid kryptonite. Are there other? Take me through another bad Embiid series where it was really possible that they had something to like high stakes.
I mean, getting swept in the bubble by Boston when Simmons was out with the back injury
they were drawing dead bad in that series though. They were
he did threaten Shake Milton that he would slap the shit out of him. So that was maybe not his best moment.
I think it is less about where was he horrible and more about you watch these other players. Yeah. That we just argued, by the way, that he should have won MVP.
I was going to say this is taking a Perkinsy like a dissonant detour here.
Regular season award. You watch like Jokic and Giannis. Let's take those two players who he should be on the level of and think about them in the playoffs. And you're not saying, well, they weren't really the reason they didn't win. But like that's not what you're saying. You're looking at them and you're going, well, Giannis had 40, 17, and 8, and they lost. It's like, well, okay. You never say that about Embiid. I don't think about these series that they lost and go, look, they lost the series, but Embiid was a fucking monster in that series. So that's what I want. Like when I look at it, I don't want to say like it's not that he had a horrible series. It's that he didn't have a great series.
Part of that is definitely some of the fluke injuries for sure.
And I guess maybe, going back to that Toronto series, that was the famous, Embiid was plus $1 million and the rest of the team when Embiid was on the floor was minus 1,000. And because he has such an impact just by being out there and being what he is, that maybe I and others have been sort of too easy on what you're talking about, which is like, where's the opposite where you just take the game by the throat and win it for us? Other than, you can look at the early part of the Toronto series this past year, including the Game 3 buzzer beater and all that. I don't know. I think it goes back to he's just not as uber efficient offensively as those guys, even in the regular season when he's rolling. He was a 50% shooter from the field. His 3-point shot is up and down. He's been turnover prone. We've all talked about how he's worked on that and improved his assist to turnover ratio. And at times the Sixers have not done him any favors with their half-court spacing, their offense. Even without Ben Simmons, there's sometimes Thibault on the court. No one's guarding him. It's not easy to be a back-to-the-basket Hakeem Olajuwon offensive player who doesn't have a 3-point shot that he necessarily trusts all the time. And he was injured last year, and that was part of it, and doesn't have what Jokic has in terms of passing skills. It's just not easy to dominate a game offensively that way. But I honestly have no worries about Embiid in the playoffs. None.
So steel man me Harden.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't.
He lost 100 pounds.
I did hear that. I can steel man you the team because I do think they are good enough and Embiid is transcendent enough that they just need like good James Harden. They don't need all NBA first team, second team James Harden. They don't need that guy. It doesn't matter if Houston Harden is now dead and buried forever. It doesn't matter. He was plenty good in Philly when they got him. He had really good games in the playoffs, despite dealing with on-again, off-again injuries that are hopefully in the rear view now. They just need that guy. The team is stacked enough that they don't need him to be Houston Harden, but they can't have him be the ball never found its way back to me Harden. They can't have him be, is he even out there in another elimination game? Houston fans get so mad when I and others go through the elimination game record and they're like, oh, you're cherry picking. I was like, no, I've watched in 2020 in the bubble when that Houston team with Russ and no center came up against the Lakers in the second round. I wrote this whole thing about how like this is an opportunity for James Harden to redefine what he is as a postseason player. And I watched didn't watch, but I looked at every sort of playoff series, every big game, the last 5 minutes of every close game I watched, went back and watched. And just the evidence is what it is. Like his really good playoff games are disproportionately low in impact, meaning like his team's up 3-0, down 3-0, up 3-1, whatever. And his bad games are disproportionately really, really bad. Like Miami game 6 last season, bad. And in the very, very biggest spots, like I don't know that we've ever had a no-brainer Hall of Famer, top 75 guy with so many elimination game just beyond duds. And the Miami one for me is like, I was, other people were broken before I was, that one broke me. And the ball never found its way back to me, broke me. And so I can't, I don't know if I can recover. I can't steel man James Harden. I can't.
What do you think I mean, hard to know. If you had to guess, what is the reason for that? What is the reason for the stuff that he, obviously last year, whether it's the hamstring or just like age, whatever, but what is the reason for being such an effective offensive player, one of the most effective offensive players ever for the large part of his career, and not delivering? Let's give some of those Houston runs the benefit of the doubt a little bit. Not delivering as consistently as you'd like to see it in big playoff moments.
He's in it. Okay, so let me preface this by saying he has had some big playoff games, like 2019 when they won games 3 and 4 against the Warriors to even that series at 2-2. He had monster games. That was a monster series for him. They ended up losing 4-2 in like very dispiriting fashion after Durant gets hurt, and it's like right there for them. And I have written many a loving word about how brilliant and scheme breaking and revolutionary James Harden is as a player. You can go look it up. I've said this before. I don't know James Harden. I've only interviewed him a couple times. I have like zero insight into him other than what people say about him second and third hand, people who've been around him. Take that for what it's worth. He's always given me the vibe of a front runner a little bit. Like when it's easy and when the team is winning and when the step backs are falling, he just wants more. He just looks and feels different. And the moment it gets really, really hard, like, this defense isn't going to let me have this. This is the best team I've played this season. Oh my God, my shot's not falling. He just seems to not want to do the thing that we want all the best guys to do, which is to dig really deep and be like, I'm fucking pushing back. Like I'm ready for this. I'm mentally ready for this. And he just doesn't seem to want it. And you've certainly, I bet you guys have read and heard the speculation like, oh, he just doesn't care about the legacy stuff as much as other superstars do. It's almost spun around like he has a more reasonable take on life than like the obsessive Michael Jordan types. Like he has a proper perspective. He doesn't get wrapped up in that. And I'm like, can you get wrapped up in it? Like I'd like you to get wrapped up in it. You only have a finite period of time to do this. And you're one of the best players ever. Can you find the ball with your team facing elimination? You're James Harden. Find the ball.
Here's a positive thing after that, which is completely fair. I'm terrified of watching him, honestly.
You can't do what he did in game 6, and you just called it inexcusable. Just you cannot do it.
Well, he looked like he was. I'm not saying this will come out the wrong way. He appeared as if he didn't want to play anymore. Like he appeared as if he wanted the series to be over. Like he lost on purpose. Like that this is going to be too hard. I don't want to do this. And honestly, that is, if you were to make a non-injury complaint about Embiid in the playoffs, the front runner thing, Embiid can be similar. He when things are going great, it's airplaning, but when it's not, he's pouting and yada, yada. Okay, good thing. We have struggled, I think, in a lot of different ways to come up with a satisfactory comp for Tyrese Maxey. Is there a player, a good NBA player that you think of when you look at what Tyrese Maxey came in as, has evolved into so far, and could evolve into, that you look at and you go, he reminds me of X?
I'm trying to think of the thing I think of when I close my eyes and think of Tyrese is the diagonal gap attack, like the catch and go, and I'm too fast for everybody. Mm-hmm. Who I'm trying to think of a player that really sort of rep, but also can run pick and roll and get me 20 a game. I'm trying to think of
Derrick Rose. We've never talked about him, but
I think his pre-injury like physicality and athleticism was just so much more overwhelming
for sure
than what Tyrese is. I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit.
It's weird, right? Because almost every player you can come up with an imaginary player, but he is tough. I saw somebody on Sixers Reddit compare his early stats with Dwayne Wade, and he's just like, I watch him and I don't think of Dwayne Wade at all. You know, maybe effectiveness level at this period of his career, it's similar, but I don't think of that when I watch him.
He's going to be like kind of what DeJounte Murray is going to be this year playing off Trae Young. I could see him looking like that. Kind of what everyone hoped Eric Bledsoe would be maybe early in his career.
That's a good one.
I mean, and people are going to laugh at that.
Athletic.
People don't remember like LeBron, like mini LeBron, Eric Bledsoe.
Right. I mean, it's almost like him right now, Maxey Harden, and this is a comp that's been used before, are if like Dame and CJ were flipped a little bit. Like if CJ had been the guy for a couple years in Portland before Dame got there, and then Dame was just like slowly starting to work his way in and had to defer a little bit more and had to just like attack off ball, off the catch the way you're talking. Obviously, Maxey is not the shooter Dame is, although he was great last year and continues to improve at a crazy rate. And he probably doesn't have Dame's like verticality, like getting at the rim sometimes as Dame did when he was younger. But like that's the vibe. Just like too fast, too shifty, able to pull up from wherever, but still deferring a little bit more than you would expect a primary ball handler type this quickly into his career to do.
He is an unusual player, and particularly now the role that he's going to play alongside Harden and Embiid. But I mean, if that shooting is anything like real, he's a force. And like you guys probably went through phases of the playoffs where you thought, I kind of trust this guy more than almost anyone on the team right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
He didn't have that. He's not like a particularly crafty ball handler as like an offense initiator. And I think when they gave it to him and they asked him to do it when Harden was checked out, he didn't quite have it. And that's one of the things I'm super excited to see from him this year is what he adds. You know,
and he's a little bit either pull up or blow by. That's kind of the vibe right now. Improving his passing, working pick and roll, finding guys. Whether it's I'd be interested to see if there's. I mean, I imagine that Harden and Trez are going to be the pick and roll combo a lot since they've done it before. But I'd be interested to find if there's like a Maxey bread and butter with somebody where he gets a handle on passing and gets a handle on like how to really run an offense a little bit more, which is nice that he doesn't have to do all of it right now at this stage of his career with Harden there.
How about a really rich man's, and you're going to laugh at this, but this guy averaged, I'm looking at now, 18, 16, 14 a game in his prime mid-20s years, like a super rich man's Leandro Barbosa.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see it. He's a unique guy because
that's
like
a killer, Zach.
Yeah, that's not like
super rich man's. I said like Daddy Warbucks.
Because
like
that's
Barbosa.
That's what like, you know, going the last year, Spike kept saying like Maxey is a sixth man, like kind of over and over again, and then Maxey just because that's the profile, which I get, but he just kept being too good.
Oh, he's better. I mean, he's
to not
what
be.
He was last year was incredible.
I said that. I just want to be clear. Mea culpa. I said I was wrong. I did not see that coming.
I'm just going pure stylistic, like who do I close my eyes and see catch on the gap off a better player and just lightning speed to the rim.
I see some Barbosa for sure.
A lot of our people have brought this up, and the chatters are mentioning Tony Parker. It's just that Tony Parker was such a crafty ball handler, and Maxey is not.
I thought about Tony Parker because the Spurs would have run all those sets where he would loop around the baseline, designed to get him catching on the move at a diagonal. But I thought the same as you. He was just at heart, he was more of just an on ball, a million pick and rolls, mid range jumper. That was the bread and butter. Yeah,
Parker's more of a wizard with the ball in his hands, and Maxey is already a much better shooter from the outside than Parker ever was.
At least for last year. Yeah, I would like to. I'm curious to see
even
whether
just volume, like comfort, like Parker was a slow, like almost like Ricky Rubio style. Like he's got to like see it for a little bit before he's like willing to hoist from there.
What Maxey started doing, pulling up on threes.
Yeah. It was crazy.
And then it persisted into the playoffs, even when teams would go over screens on him and stuff. Like it was, I mean, if that wasn't real, that was an all-time fluke. I think it was real. I mean, he might not, what did he shoot? 42 or 41 last year? He might shoot 38% this year, but on that volume, that's totally fine.
I want to talk about Matisse. Do you want to go to the last commercial first?
Yeah, last commercial. I wanted to bring up Matisse too because that was another bone to pick. I had. This
is a very minor bone.
Very minor bone. Very minor. And then I have my non-Sixers bone is a very big bone that I would like to debate with you, but that's later.
Oh, I like that one. I look forward to that one.
Yeah, I already have my argument. I'm excited to do it. Anyway, I was very excited as, LL Pavorsky has been an advertiser for a very long time, Kornblau, very long time, Big Barker. The first person to visit me in New York at WFAN of our sponsors was Ben from MortgageCS. Ben was in New York, stopped by with his daughter, Sydney, saw the studios, and we sat and we bullshitted for a while. Wow, MortgageCS, great company. Great dude Ben is, by the way. I had met Alec, but I never met Ben. Ben, I met him online, just never in real life. MortgageCS, man, I remember buying a house for the first time and how puzzled I was by the entire process of getting a mortgage and then looking at the numbers. They go, well, 4.25 is the rate, but it's not really the rate. It's not like the APR. Then you have to add this to it. And it was so confusing and I didn't know who to trust. You can trust MortgageCS. Most specifically because they are independent. So they are a mortgage broker, not a lender. They're not giving you the money. They are finding you the best rate. A lot of mortgage brokers have relationships with banks that you don't know about. Like want to steer you one certain way, but not MortgageCS. They want to steer you the best way. They want to steer you what is the best way for you. And the other thing that they do, and everyone has said this, every Ricky listener has gone there, they want to educate you on the process, even if you don't use them. And this is true. They truly believe this. Even if you don't end up using them, they want you to walk away from MortgageCS knowing more about the mortgage process. They are available at all times. They are small, which means they are nimble. They're always available. Ben, the CEO, he actually got a text from a Ricky listener while we were there. Ben, the CEO, his cell phone number, 267-391-7425. 267-391-7425. You call or text him at any time. You're looking for a home, you need a pre-qualification letter, call or text Ben. You're there. Just great. Or go to mortgagecs.com/Ricky. See the great site that they've built for Ricky listeners, mortgagecs.com/Ricky to become a Ricky MortgageCS VIP. The final thing I say that Ben told me, it seems like not a great time to buy a home because mortgage rates are higher, but really what that does is there's less competition and you're not going to have to bid $50,000 over the cost of a home. And maybe you buy a home now and when mortgage rates drop in a few years, you refinance with MortgageCS. It's not a bad time. And especially the beginning of fall, people with kids aren't looking to move once school started. Call MortgageCS, call Ben, text Ben, or go to mortgagecs.com/Ricky. MortgageCS. This advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. MortgageCS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions may apply. Company NMLS 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com/Ricky for more information. Mike, back to Matisse.
All right. Matisse is a very interesting and polarizing player. The Sixers now have easily the deepest team that they've had in my lifetime. The way that, look, I'm an Isaiah Joe. I think Isaiah Joe has, so he's the 14th guy right now.
I'm in my notes on the Sixers for when I did my preview. I was like, can I squeeze Isaiah Joe in?
We can always squeeze some Isaiah Joe.
He
Absolutely.
might be good.
We got out of the rotation right now. If we're going 10 deep, say Matisse is the 10th guy, and you're thinking it's Melton, House, Trez, and Matisse. Paul Reed's out of the rotation right now, kind of. George Niang might find his way in there over Milton sometimes. Korkmaz is apparently had a fucking numb thumb last year and couldn't feel his hand. Maybe that's why he wasn't shooting well. I guess that's something to be concerned about. And Isaiah Joe, who had a great summer league. And then there's Matisse, and I've been sort of talking about it for a long time. Like, it seems like there's a consolidation trade coming, like a 2-for-1, 3-for-1 type thing to like bolster one more guy that you feel comfortable starting or closing with so that like Daniel House isn't quite as important to this team? And is that the Matisse and Korkmaz combo trade? You mentioned Korkmaz and George Niang for Jay Crowder.
Yeah, I tried to get you guys Crowder. I bet they'll try. Daryl will try anything. They should try to get Jay Crowder.
Sure, he would help.
He would be fine. He would be another like should probably only guard fours type of vibe, the same way that like Tobias Harris is, and I guess PJ you kind of just are comfortable with doing what's got to be done.
Yeah, he'll beat the hell out of anybody.
Remains to be seen how long he can keep doing that. But what do you think Matisse's trade value is around the league? And then because Spike and I argue about that constantly, and like, do you think that, you know, this is the first time that Matisse has said he's had a summer now? Like before he had like he was doing stuff and it was COVID and he had like the Olympic team and all this other shit. And do we think that like Matisse is capable of getting better in a way that makes him more playable in the playoffs?
Trade value first.
Yeah.
I don't think very high.
You don't.
I haven't asked or been asked about Matisse Thybulle by a front office person in quite a long time. Other than today, I was batting around extensions with people, and I think that's one of the reasons the trade value is maybe a little low. Is there's a little bit of extension price tag fear, even though the cap's going to go up, yada yada. So I think could they get a couple seconds for him? I think so. I don't know if you're getting a first, and certainly not a good one for him right now. And what you're really asking is, can he shoot? Because you just can't be a total zero offensively and play, even if you're a great defensive player. And that's the bone that Spike's going to pick with me, I know. And particularly when your team is built around a post player, it just makes it so hard. I mean, you guys, I don't need to tell you guys saw, like, no one's guarding him. His guys clogging the lane. Yeah. They can't do anything. And he cuts every now and then. You're like, oh, look at that cut. That's a good cut. Embiid found him on a cut. And that's like once every couple of games is not going to matter in a playoff series. You have to be able to shoot. I frankly thought that he would be able to shoot well enough ish by now. And now I'm worried. And you go through the Sixers rotation, like you said, 10 deep. I mean, with Tyrese, Harden, Tobias, Embiid, they don't need to go 10 deep when they actually are trying to win games. They can go 8 deep. They can put whatever. They have 2 of those guys on the floor at all times to bolster the offense. I think one of the questions about the Sixers is if he's just, this is what he is, do they ever need him on the floor in a playoff series for his defense? And if the answer is no, they may just not play him.
And the other thing, and it's not just the shooting, it's how occasionally very clueless, like not NBA level clueless, he still is with the ball in his hands when they close out, or he's having to run a fast break or do like rudimentary stuff. And he looks like, Spike talks about him looking like he's on skates, which I think is right. And he just like hasn't gotten better. He hasn't gotten more comfortable. He hasn't settled in to where doing something that like fucking Gary Harris can do, which is just like be competent, be an adult. And occasionally he still looks like a kid scooting around out there. And that is made worse by the fact that he is still not a good shooter. And more importantly than that, I think not a willing shooter.
He just looks like this will come across as worse than it is. He just doesn't look like he's cares or locked in. Like he's sort of a doofus. It looks like an airhead. Like he's not quite paying attention. Almost like, this is an old person reference, but like he's like in Quantum, like Scott Bakula, like woke up in Quantum Leap in an NBA player body, and he's like, "Whoa, what am I doing out here? Oh, what am I supposed to do with the ball?" Like, and I was just like, throw it in the air. Like even on defense sometimes he gambles when he shouldn't gamble, and I actually think he's a little overrated defensively. Like
he definitely was last year. He certainly was last year.
Spectacular and does cool shit, but is not strong enough, doesn't make great decisions on screens, whatever. My bone to pick with you is that you voted him first team all defense, and I think that
first team or second team.
I'm pretty sure you voted him first team, but
I should know my own ballot. I don't know off the top of my head. I can go.
He shouldn't have been either. I don't think. I think that was a mistake.
I'm too tired at 10 p.m. to go back and look at my thinking for second and first team all defense. I think he's better than you think he is. You watch him every game. I don't. So, yeah, certainly there are matchups strength-wise. Like, you don't feel comfortable the way you would Tony Allen in his prime of just I can put him on a guy that's bigger and heavier than he is, and he's not going to – even like Kyle Lowry. Like, you don't feel like Kyle Lowry can guard centers and you're not uncomfortable with it, really. I get all that. I just think the stuff he does is so unusual and so dominant. But to the larger point, I guess a shorter way of saying what I said before is I think the Sixers very intentionally built this team to open up the possibility of we don't have to play Matisse Thybulle in the playoffs in a series that really matters. We have enough two-way guys that defend well enough that we've at least opened up the possibility that, like, even against Tatum and Brown or whatever it is, we don't need him if he's just not going to be ready offensively to play.
Yeah, he's in. If they can't, like, look, if there's a trade, I would be fine with Matisse and Korkmaz for Jay Crowder. I think it would bolster depth and two-way optionality, and just as another guy that can like body somebody. We might be in danger of like having too many guys who are like described as dogs, and they're just gonna like.
I was gonna say it would be kind of funny to have just is there any other recent Miami Heat tweener forward that you guys can Caleb Martin become available?
One of the Morris twins. Somebody's gonna get hurt. But like if this ends up being the team as is, using Matisse as almost like a submarine reliever, like a loogie type reliever that can just come in and throw like a weird off speed pitch at somebody and like give a different look, and they could like go to zone with him at the top of the zone. I was
gonna say, throw him in a UW zone and let him.
Yeah, like he used to run for Mike Hopkins at Washington. Like that's an interesting look, but like long term sustainability wise, I just don't see like Doc is just not a creative coach. Like he's not willing to take those risks and take chances and stuff. He has his guys, and he is willing to go to war with his guys.
Can I just say,
yeah.
This is so pessimistic. We've been going for 1 hour. I see the time, 1 hour, 1 minute, and 50 seconds. Let's just take a step back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harden and Embiid pick and roll. Totally unstoppable. No one had any answers for it. Embiid, you guys think he should have won MVP. I didn't vote for him, but like first team All NBA, second team, whatever. I guess I put him second team All NBA because I'm a stickler for the rules. Whatever. He's one of the top 5 players in the league. Period. End of story. Okay. They're super deep. They're super deep. The Nets are like, can you trust the Nets? The Celtics are going through injuries and a crazy internal crisis that will have some impact that's hard to quantify today. Sure. The Bucks are the Bucks. They're awesome. They're supporting cast. Maybe it gets healthy. Maybe it's a little old. Maybe Wes Matthews has more to give. Maybe he doesn't. Like, why isn't the whole podcast just, hey, the Sixers can win the title and people are talking about them like they might be the 4 seed in the East? I'm like, why isn't the whole podcast just, why can't this be, are you just too scarred? Is it the Harden thing? Is it the elimination game Harden? Why is that not the topic of the whole podcast?
Definitely scarred, but optimistic. I love DeAnthony Melton. I love the DeAnthony Melton signing. I've been in love with Danny Melton since he was at SC. Like the perfect kind of combo guard player to play next to either Harden or Maxey. I think Shake will have a bounce back year if he can find minutes. I think they have more two-way guys. I think they have more physicality. Last year they didn't get a single loose ball. They didn't get a single like rebound that touched the ground. They were like easily back down. That's not going to happen this year. I do think there's more depth. I think it's nice that even though I don't think Trez should play a minute in the playoffs, I think that it's nice that Embiid has a capable backup center for the regular season that you should feel comfortable. Like, okay, let's like sit him up on a back-to-back from now and then, and there's not like a 0% chance that they win this game. I feel good about it. I feel good and dangerously good about it. But the Doc stuff, are they going to play? Or is Doc going to allow PJ Tucker to play some backup 5 in the playoffs in certain times? I feel pessimistic about that.
Probably
I feel a little bit worried that Tobias is going to. What did you say?
He said probably not.
Probably not. Yeah. I'm a little bit worried Tobias is going to revert. Matisse, who knows? Like they're like one more guy away in a world where that you can feel like this person can do kind of a little bit everything on the court. They can defend a little bit, they can shoot a little bit, and they can dribble a little bit because some there's some guys in this team that are a little. That's why I love Melton, and he can do those things, but it feels like they're a little bit like one trait too short in a couple guys that you wish like, man, that would be nice to have, and that's kind of why I've been waiting for the consolidation trade that hasn't happened yet.
I think so. That's a thoughtful answer. Mine is, I think everyone just looks and feels it. I mean, the Sixers have been the number one seed. They've done all of these things. They've had, and they have not been past the second round.
And they would have beaten Miami if Embiid was fully healthy. They were 2-2 in games Embiid played. They would have won that series. Even with a very flawed team, Embiid would have won them that series if he was healthy for all of it.
Yeah, the first two games were just like,
yeah,
what are we even doing here?
But you can call those injuries fluke injuries.
I took an elbow from Pascal Siakam in like the last 2 minutes of the game or whatever it was.
I was arguing with it or not. I was discussing Kyrie Irving with someone about whether he is injury prone or not. And they're like, well, the injuries are not all related. They're little fluky injuries, blah, 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 blah. But that's what injury prone is. Injury prone is someone who happens to get all of these sort of fluky injuries. I just in my gut, I asked you to steel man Harden, who is the primary offensive playmaker in the playoffs. If you cannot come up with an argument for why this guy at 34, who by the way is a Hall of Famer, one of the 50 greatest players of all time, debatably one of the 2 or 3 best offensive players in the history of the NBA, and you cannot say out loud why he is going to be a reason that they are going to win a championship. We can't say it. That's what I can get over that. I'm psyched about PJ Tucker. I've wanted PJ Tucker on the Sixers for years. Daryl Morey has done as well as he probably could have done unless there was a different Simmons trade out there. I just worry that it's just all not enough. But if that's the case, I'm just ready to just watch them and have fun. And they don't win a title. They don't win a title. Whatever. But I just don't think they can win a title.
I guess my steel manning Harden in short would be, the team is so good that he just has to be good. All he has to do is be good. He doesn't have to carry them. He doesn't have to be amazing James Harden. Just be good. Let me ask you this. Without checking, can you guys name the players who were 6th, 7th, and 8th in playoff minutes on the 2019 Sixers, who I think are the best Sixers team to date, not including this one, of the Embiid era, the Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, 6th, 7th, and 8th in playoff minutes.
James Ennis was definitely one of them.
6th. He was 6th.
I think Mike Scott was probably 7th.
7th.
Wow, look at Mike.
In the Toronto series, it might have been Greg Monroe.
Greg Monroe is 9th overall.
Oh, so close.
So close. Boban.
Yeah,
Boban.
Yeah, Boban.
Just for those are the first 3 guys off the bench. That team was awesome. We all know the Kawhi shot. Simmons wasn't even playing particularly well in that series and seemed to shrink as it went on, except for Game 6 when he had a sort of a crazy Ben Simmons game. And that's the team that we're holding up against this one. I think this team, as amazing as Butler was and as great a fit as he was, given how Simmons was playing in that series and given the bench, I think this team is just better. It should be better.
I agree. And then my steel man for Harden would be not I think the days, look, I can hope that the hamstring is healthier and that he can blow by people a little bit more. He just didn't do it at any point last year. He wasn't getting by people. He hit step backs. And he would occasionally use that little chicken wing, on the drive to the rim to push a guy back and hit a layup at the rim. And his numbers at the rim were still good, as I think you talked about on a recent podcast. It just didn't feel like he was unstoppable. And so I don't think for my own mental health, I don't think we're ever going to get back to that version of Harden. But if we can get to doesn't hold the ball Harden, quicker decisions, a little shooting off the catch, a little just caretaker point guard Harden with some of the best passing of all time, with Maxey going at the rim, Tucker shooting 1,000% from the corners, Tobias finding his little holes here and there, and Embiid being an MVP candidate again. I think Harden can be a more like just like a stability maker almost. And I know that that's not what you're necessarily paying, for whatever reason, the 11th best player according to ESPN in the league to do. But like that, I think the team is good enough around him where he just has to keep the trains moving, hit a couple shots, hit a heads. Like the team is more athletic. They're more physical than last year. Maxi's going to, hopefully another step forward. If Embiid's healthy, I feel like they're absolutely capable of coming out of these.
You pulled optimistic Mike out of the bag. You
Always,
needed to summon him.
I can always get it there. I can always get it there. This is definitely the best team that they've had. It's just a matter of like, will one thing go right? And in the last 8 years, aside from like Embiid getting over 2 season-ending injuries at the beginning of his career, which is crazy in its own right, and we probably used up a lot of goodwill for that one.
To get him on the court.
To get him on the court. That was a lot of like, we were out for a while. And Maxi, not only the Maxi pick conveying, but also Maxi being as good as he is. Like, that's it. Nothing else has like worked out where it's like, the
seedings have kind of worked out ideally for 2 straight years, and that didn't really even work out.
No, it didn't.
You had these titanic clashes on the other side of the bracket in the conference semifinals, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, and the Sixers just wilting away futilely. So you just need one of those things to kind of just work out in a way that it hasn't.
So before we've kept you a long time. Thank you. I want to present this to you before we let you go. I'm not going to say the name of the player or the name of the team. I just want to present to you a situation, and I want you to tell me what you think of this situation. Player X is on Team Y for 4 years. In those 4 years, in 3 of those years, this team is a massive disappointment. So much so that for 2 of the years, they don't make the playoffs, and for another year, they lose in the first round. The 4th year, they actually win the title. However, before the playoffs, there's a break of 3 months. And they play the playoffs at Disney World in front of no fans. Which of these 4 years would you say is an anomaly? And would you say that there's a possibility that that title that came with 3 months off before the playoffs that was played in Disney World in front of no fans may not be quite as legitimate as every other NBA title?
So obviously you're talking about LeBron.
Oh yeah, I don't know how you figured it out.
And the fact that the 3 years, you're right. I think when you look at the totality of his Lakers, there's the first year that everyone just sort of throws away as well. They didn't have Anthony Davis, and there were trade rumors, and the young guys weren't ready, and then he got hurt, and they gave up. Like people just forget that year. Luke Walton doesn't forget that year existed, but like people just ignore it. Look, the bubble thing. I do think it inflated shooting numbers across the league. I think that's real. The shooting backdrop, the lack of fans. But my thing is
no road games,
no travel. But I think the ultimate counter argument, and all different teams and people going through different levels of adversity, mental stress, anxiety, whatever, all very real stuff. The conditions were the same for everybody. Maybe your point is that a player of LeBron's age and mileage and recent injury history before that benefited to a unique degree from the 3-month hiatus in the season when he was already dealing with injuries, I think, before the season stopped. Maybe Anthony Davis benefited to a crazy, unusual level from the shooting backdrop. But and other teams, like everyone's, the Clippers, they were just sort of in disarray. The bubble wasn't for them. The Bucks had a lot of their minds on the shooting in Kenosha and social justice, and they boycotted a game that maybe the bubble just wasn't right for them. Pascal Siakam, he didn't deal with the bubble. Like that's what it was. Like that's what it was for everybody. And the Lakers went and they dealt with it and they won. And the people did the same thing to the Heat, right? Like the Heat were a fake finalist. Like the militaristic Heat, they were uniquely able to cope in the bubble. Well, the Heat have been pretty damn good since then too. Like I don't think that was a fluke, and it's the same thing with Denver. Like I can't.
But the Lakers haven't been pretty damn good. Like the Heat were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. The Bucks are the favorite to win the title, or the co-favorites to win the title. We're talking about all these other teams. Denver, nobody would be surprised if they were in the finals or won the title.
I was going to bring up Denver because I can't tell you how many people have like, well, when is Jokic going to, have a great playoffs? I'm like, Jokic has had amazing playoffs. Do you guys remember the bubble? He like single-handedly destroyed the Clippers franchise, but people don't count it the same.
But nobody even takes the Lakers seriously, and most people, like, if you were to bet whether they'll even make the playoffs, it's like a worse than a 50-50 proposition. My point is this. They won something. They won a tournament. They did not win an NBA title that year.
I'll just say I would kill for a Mickey Mouse Sixers title. I wouldn't fucking.
Yeah, I
give a
don't.
shit.
I do feel like if it weren't LeBron and if it weren't the Lakers, I just don't think there would be this level of going back and relitigating the title. I just don't think there. I think people want to discredit LeBron and the Lakers to some unusual level because of who they are and what they are. It was different. But they won. They went and won. They went and played in the same conditions as everyone else. And why have they been so bad since? Because they destroyed their roster, in part because they destroyed the roster that helped them win a championship. They deviated from everything that they should have learned about how to surround those two guys who, even separate from the injury issues, they destroyed their roster. And now they're trying to unbury themselves from the rubble of all the bad moves that they've made.
Go on. I was just going to thank Zach. I don't have anything else to say to him.
Last question before we let you go. And not talk about Isaiah Joe for a year or until the Sixers trade him to some other team where he succeeds. And we say, why wasn't he like that here? What is more likely what is more likely to happen? The Sixers advance to the NBA Finals, or Doc Rivers is not the coach next year?
Oh, come on. This is so easy, Zach. Don't.
More likely to happen?
Yeah.
More likely to happen.
Doc Rivers is not the coach next year.
Okay. So now who's pessimistic, Zach? Now who is?
Well, but you're giving me this binary choice of what's more likely: they win 3 playoff rounds, which they've never done in this era, or the coach that was already somewhat shaky ground is fired because they failed to do it again. I mean, obviously that's more likely. That's
okay.
a tough one.
Conference finals or
I understand. Oh, we win 2 playoff rounds. Sorry, my bad. Wait, what was it was in there? I thought it was make the NBA Finals.
Yes, I'm now amending it to conference finals or Doc fired. What do you think?
Conference Finals.
Okay. All right. So we're in that safe Zach riding the fence on our precious fuck up Sixers.
Zach, I truly appreciate you fucking with us.
Always.
You're the best, man.
It's fun. It's too serious sometimes. It's just sports. You guys keep it fun, and you can argue and criticize in a way that is both funny, cutting, and civil all at the same time, which is a tough thing to do. And it's not no one's yelling, no one's calling each other idiots. It's a fun brand of disagreeableness that I like to be a part of.
We will. I will make sure Four Fingers Brewery in Aston sends you some more one beer. I will.
It's delicious.
If you get your face on a beer, you should have an endless supply of it. So I'll let Jack Fritz know.
And look,
thank
man.
you.
Sometimes you can have two or three.
Yeah.
You work hard. Treat yourself. You don't have to settle for just one.
That's right.
Listen, you know where to find. He's fucking Zach Lowe. Low Post, ESPN, all that stuff. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach.
Mike, are you down with TTP?
Yeah, lick face.